Inside is a game I didn't get a chance to play when it released mid last year. Having been a huge fan of PlayDead's other release, Limbo, I'm not really quite sure why it took so long for me to play their follow-up game, Inside. Inside is not exactly a sequel to the originally released Limbo, but it can be classed as a spiritual successor. You play as a nameless boy who is travelling across a dark, rainy universe. He must stop the forces of evil that are attempting to take over the world by experimenting on humans to turn them into a zombie-like state. Although the game doesn't have any narration, dialogue or text, it still does a very good job progressing the story through visual aids. Right from the beginning of the game, you could really tell that this boy was not really prepared for what he was getting himself in for, but he managed to push on in the face of the threats before him. Usually, any games that are in the horror genre don't really sit very well with me. Basically, I'm a massive pansy and the slightest thing will make me jump. While Inside does have moments of horror injected into it, as well as a jump scare here and there, I was able to persevere through to the end without needing to change my underwear. Although maybe one time I did come very close. I was particularly impressed with the sound design throughout Inside. The importance of the sound effects became very apparent right from the first level. As I was trudging through a shallow puddle, I could hear the sound of dogs in the background, and they were getting closer. The game doesn't really have a soundtrack, so you don't have that audio trigger that something is about to happen, but the sense of urgency that flowed through me as I could hear these rabid dogs get ever closer to my child made me want to hide under my desk. And when the inevitable did happen, and they caught up with Boy, the sound effects again made it feel all the more realistic as they took in for dinner on my lifeless dead body. Inside also follows the same sort of art style of Limbo. Limbo is purely black and white, and whilst Inside also has very much the same, there is also a little bit of colour added in here and there, such as making it abundantly clear when a button is nearby that needs to be pressed. Also, the way the lighting is portrayed throughout the game is mightily impressive too, and even being used as a gameplay mechanic at times. The gameplay does a very good job of trying to differentiate itself from Limbo. Limbo is more based around natural puzzles such as avoiding giant spiders' grips or swimming from broken down machinery. Inside is more centralised around more drawn out longer puzzles that require a lot of thought, planning and sometimes can span across multiple scenes within a level. The most basic puzzles were having to outrun dogs as mentioned before, but also having to avoid enemy guards and tracking down made up the opening few scenes worth of puzzles. After that, the puzzles became more expansive and you were required to do a little bit of investigation around the area before you could finally come up with a plan. More often than not though, most of the puzzles are merely just common sense, but being a gamer you tend to gravitate towards a more complex solution. I did fall foul to this a number of times and felt sufficiently stupid when I had to succumb to checking an FAQ online just to find the answer to a puzzle. Again, following suit of Limbo, Inside doesn't take that long to finish either. Being the second game from PlayDead Studio, I was maybe expecting something a little bit more expansive in terms of length, but sometimes as I crept close to the end of the game, I felt like the time it took me to reach there was plenty enough. That's not to say my experience with the latter levels felt like a chore. Actually, it was quite the opposite. The last level in Inside could be quite possibly my favourite level in a video game ever. I played the game on stream with a couple of people watching, and it wasn't just me who was absolutely horrified with what was happening, but also having absolute blast playing and watching. However, I was a little bit let down by the ending of the game. It just kind of stops with no real explanation of what just happened. As I sat there watching the end of the credits, I was really expecting to see a cutscene or animation to wrap up things. However, I was merely transported to the start of a new game again. I wouldn't say it spoiled my overall experience with Inside, but it did leave a sour taste in my mouth after completing the game. If we were doing a straight comparison between the two games PlayDead have released, then Inside is not only a technically better game, but also have more redeeming factors such as high production values, sound design, and overall gameplay mechanics. Inside should also be classed as one of the best 2D platforming games ever to be released. Steam is awash with 2D platformers, and it doesn't really take much to stand out from the crowd. But when it's done as well as Inside, I can do nothing more than say any gamer who's a fan of indie projects, puzzles, or atmospheric experiences need to be checking out Inside. My final score for Inside is an 8 out of 10.